Call the meeting to order. Meeting of the Carver Select Board, Wednesday, April 15th, 11 a.m. This is remotely via Zoom. To start, that my understanding is that because of the electrical storm the other day, we had a power outage, or Area 58 had a power outage, was unable to broadcast the FinCom meeting last night live. We are not going out live at this time. It was our intent to do so. This will be, the link will be made available for people to view as soon as possible, keeping with the governor's requirements. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 10, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Carver Select Board is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of the members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. The first thing we need to do actually now is to go into executive session pursuant to General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct negotiations for non-union personnel and interim town administrator, and to reconvene in open session. Does someone want to make that motion?
Moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Ms. Hewins?
Ron, I can't hear you.
Ms. Hewins, how do you vote?
Sarah Hewen says aye.
Robert Belvin says aye.
Mark
Alan
Townsend
Dunham
says
says
aye.
aye.
Go ahead, Alan, again.
Alan Dunham says aye.
Ron, do we
Ron.
need to read the actual motion?
I just did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is going to be.
I never heard. I must have a audio problem at some point, but I didn't hear that, so that's fine.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Yeah, it could be the iPad isn't as good as the
Could very
laptop.
well be.
All right, so with that, we are going to executive session. We'll be closing this link. Actually, you should all sign out of this meeting. I will send out new invite for the executive session, which you should have very shortly. And we'll meet in executive session. When we conclude executive session, we'll return to the open session. You can use the same link that you were provided for to get to this session now to come back into the open session. All right, I'll see you in executive session shortly.
Thanks.
Call the meeting to order. Reconvening the meeting of the Carver Select Board on Wednesday, April 15th, 2020. We are coming out of executive session, which we went into for the purpose of conducting negotiations for non-union personnel, to discuss an interim town administrator, and to reconvene in open session. So we will pick up the agenda where it was left. So for 11:20, by the way, Michael, the best you can do, I've got a 1 o'clock capital outlay meeting, so it's being 12:30 now. I'll count on your reticence to move us along. So we'll start with just recognition of our local ServPro of Plymouth Wareham for sanitizing Carver's police, fire, and EMS weekly for free. They're doing this as a thank you for the first responders in surrounding towns. They will continue to do this on a weekly basis for now. So in light of everything going on in the pandemic, they really should be applauded for just for doing this. And I think it would be nice if we sent a letter off to that effect.
I agree.
Would be everyone comfortable with that?
Yes.
All right. Then, Mr. Milanowski, would you make sure, or Elaine, would you make sure that we get a letter off thanking them for this very generous effort during this national crisis? Thank you. 11:25, update on Carver Public Safety.
Yes, just real briefly, as we know, our public safety continues to do a yeoman's job during this pandemic. Currently, right now, they are all fully staffed and fully functional, and we have no major issues that they haven't been able to address. So everything's going forward as currently planned. They do have contingency plans should things get worse.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Yes, I think we should also, since we thank Serpro so much, also during this time of the pandemic and the emergency situation, I think a great gratitude should go from the board to the emergency dispatchers, both police and fire, during this time, because let's face it, none of the EMS or personal safety responses happen without first going through the dispatcher. So I think the dispatchers have been doing a yeoman's job, and I like them to be recognized.
Absolutely, I completely agree.
Thank you, Alan. Any other questions? All right, Mr. Malinowski, the vote to transfer funds to the town administrator line item.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, the finance director and I, as we do at this time of the year, move forward with transferring funds within major classifications of the government structure. Right now, in anticipation of the board voting a new town administrator contract, and although we don't know the total value of that, we are adding funds to the town administrator line item so that when you do execute the contract, it will have the necessary funds for that. With that, and working also with Elaine and Meg, we have identified 3 items that we can transfer and that we are going to transfer in. Just for full disclosure, we'd like to bring this to the board's attention. And historically, the board has just always taken a vote to support the budget changes, again, within the general government category, whatever the category is, that the finance director and the town administrator propose. With that, in our propane and natural gas line item, as we know, there's been a mild winter, so we haven't had to heat the buildings as much as we normally would be. We have some savings in there that we anticipate that would allow us to transfer $10,000 from that to the town administrator account. The second line item is a smaller line item. It's from our street lights line item of $6,000 to the town administrator line item. And then the largest is $18,000 from the telephone account to the town administrator account, which will put in there $34,000 to complete FY20. That should be sufficient to allow you to go forward and execute the contract with the new interim town administrator. Just as a side note, the telephone piece is the savings that have occurred because we've eliminated many copper lines. As many of you know, when we rebuilt built the new elementary school, we did have significant savings with that program. And in doing so, we were able to upgrade the entire cable fiber network of the town through the new elementary school. With that, a lot of our phone systems are voice over data, so we're able to use the internet for our phone service. But for a few secure public safety lines, this therefore reduced down significantly the amount of money we were paying for phone line services, which we anticipate on realizing this year, and we did realize those. And again, that's why that number is so large, $18,000. So again, in total, $34,000 from 3 accounts within the general government structure to go into the town administrator account.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we go ahead and endorse these transfers into the town administrator account.
Second.
Is there a second? Was there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Those
And Mr.
opposed?
Chairman, just for the
Opposed?
record, I
The ayes
did
have it.
update the finance committee last night of what my intention was to do today with this vote and made them aware of those 3 line items.
Thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda was the vote on new town administrator contract. The board just met for about a little over an hour discussing the contract terms in executive session. We did take a vote in executive session to offer a contract to Rick LaFond. We will now retake that vote to offer the contract to Mr. LaFond in public session. Unfortunately, because it is a contract negotiation, we cannot get into the details of the contract since Mr. LaFond hasn't seen some of the changes that have been made. We are anticipating that if Mr. LaFond accepts the contract being offered, that we're going to set a meeting for tomorrow at 12:30 to finalize the contract. However, I will ask for a motion, a public motion to approve offering the contract to Mr. LaFond as we did in executive session, except to do so in public session now.
I move we go ahead and accept the contract that we're proposing to Mr. LaFond.
Second.
So motion made and seconded to offer the contract as we negotiated to Mr. LaFond.
Correct.
Correct? Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
And I wanted to just take one other moment while we're on this topic. There has been some suggestion that we did not, from the beginning, open this up with the Collins Center to all candidates. So I just, from March 9th, 11:29 a.m., Sarah Hewins addressing Steve McGoldrick at the Collins Center. Hi, Steve. I just heard from our chair, Ron Clark, and he would prefer that we left our options open as to whether we hire a part-time or full-time interim town administrator. We will look at any and all applicants sent our way by the Collins Center, whether or not they are looking for full or part-time employment as an interim TA. So that and there's other documentation from the same time that we can make emails going back and forth to the Collins Center that also indicated we weren't just looking for retirees. My compliments to Sarah. She has fully documented and made completely transparent every interaction with the Collins Center through the process. So we have all the paperwork and backup documentation in terms of what we were seeking from the Collins Center from the beginning. That said, hopefully we will be back here tomorrow at 12:30. We posted a meeting not reasonably anticipated because with Mr. Milanowski leaving, tomorrow's his last, no, Friday's his last day. But given that his time is coming short, we feel it's important to try to have a town administrator appointed in place if we're able to do that with this negotiation. Next item on the agenda, review and vote on the town meeting warrant.
Yes.
Mr. Milanowski?
Mr. Chair, could I just interrupt for a minute? I was wondering if you were going to discuss the issue on the interim topic. The note that I had sent out to the applicant.
Yeah, I will. I'll touch on that very quickly. Again, Sarah was very good before she sent out notices or emails to people to check with me on things. And in this particular case, I contacted Sarah after we had made the decision to extend an offer to hire Rick LaFond and asked her to send out an email to the applicants that we did not hire, thanking them for their application. Sarah sent me a copy of that email, and I just apparently perused it too quickly because I missed the fact that she mentioned permanent town administrator in the hiring of Rick LaFond as opposed to interim. So I should have caught that. It went out. Sarah has posted a correction on Facebook saying that the intention was interim full-time, not permanent full-time. So just so we have that out there, I accept responsibility for that. All right, Mr. Milanowski, town meeting warrant.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we're still making some modifications to the town meeting warrant, but one of the things that beyond our discussion the last time when we eliminated the org chart change for the community living department, what I would like to do is to work with our finance director and make some additional modifications. And I did discuss this with the finance committee last night, so that now that we have the time and, subject to tomorrow, we'll know what the final dollar amount is, that we can put in the additional, or we can transfer money in the draft budget, which is the draft warrant, so that funding will be in place for the new town administrator for FY21. Again, it's important that FY20, when the contract's executed, that you have funds available. By the earlier concurrence with the money we're moving, you will have the funds available. And now that we have time prior to town meeting, we don't know the number, we're going to go ahead and make some modifications to the warrant to transfer those monies in there. That will mean that you will need to take a revote on the on a couple of the articles that will transfer that money in there. So I think there's going to have to be another discussion, you know, in the near future, and maybe that could be as early as tomorrow if you wanted that to be, to make those modifications for the warrant vote. And there's also one other item that's still pending,
Go ahead.
and that's with the finance director and DOR and legal counsel as it relates to all of the surplus funds from the elementary school and being able to transfer those into our capital and debt stabilization fund for the new police station, or if DOR is going to make us put that in a different location. So that's still in process, and we don't have final resolution on that second item. So at this point, I see two items that need to change on the warrant. One is it's funding the Newtown administrator's salary, and the second is still resolving the DOR issue with the finance director regarding the surplus funds from the elementary school.
Okay.
Mr.
thank you.
Chairman, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
yeah, just to make clear that that is funding for the new interim town administrator, not just the new administrator, but the new interim.
Yes.
Yeah, we need to be clear on that. And also, Mr. Milanowski has indicated that in his role as executive consultant, which he'll be taking on after he leaves as town administrator, that he would continue working with us on the annual town warrant to get completion. So,
Shouldn't that
all
be
right,
if our-
now town.
Mr. Chair, shouldn't that be if
Coming.
our interim TA and the board has a need for that consultation? It's just
Yeah,
a-
I mean, my opinion is that we do, but yeah, we can take it up with the board officially if need be.
That's,
I think Mr. Malinowski has a working knowledge of the warrant and could, as opposed to, so I think, but at any rate, we can discuss this at a further meeting.
Well,
Just
wouldn't that be up to the new interim town administrator? I don't see that or is Sarah suggesting that the board has to go ahead and agree that we go ahead and go with the consultant, which is.
Oh,
kind
no,
of strange.
I think you're right too, Alan. My point was that I don't think we should assume that the new interim town administrator is going to need a lot of help. That was my only point.
no, I wasn't
Pretty
implying
clear.
that he would, simply that the warrant is almost complete, but at any rate, we can revisit. Town administrator update, finances of the town, spending freeze, furloughs.
Yes. I don't know if anybody's read the Boston Globe, but there was an article in there yesterday that talked about experts predict plummeting state revenues will put Massachusetts in dire straits. That's the headline above the fold. It does go in there and say that Massachusetts is better than most other states, but it is predicting a $6 billion budget shortfall over 2 years. I only mention that because it's consistent with what we've been saying, is that, you know, a large portion of Carver's budget relies on state aid. And, you know, we are envisioning a reduction in state aid in some way, shape, or form. Whether or not that hits us in our last 2 months of FY20, it certainly is going to hit us in FY21. As a result of that, and in addition to reduction in local meals receipts, local permits and inspections, and also excise tax, we are going to have some revenue shortfalls in the near future. Hence, that's why we have the spending freeze that was implemented about a month ago, and why we have proposed that with the FY21 budget, that a spending freeze be put in place July 1 as well until these numbers are known. We will not have any full anticipation of what those revenue cutbacks are going to be for probably another 4 to 6 months, best case scenario. Again, it's highly likely you will need to have a special town meeting and to make some budget modifications in the future for that. That being said, is that in addition to that, I've been working with the unions and with staff. And as I've said at the last meeting and spoke about with the finance committee, is that we have worked with department heads and with the unions on doing furloughs. These are generally voluntary furloughs that have been put in place for non-essential employees. And that non-essential versus essential employee list is based upon what the federal and state guidance dictates. In that federal and state guidance, it's focused on public safety. It's focused on in inspections and the support staff that support them. So with that, for non-essential employees, we've got over 25 people that have volunteered to take a furlough, either for full-time or part-time. Again, we are working with the unions on that at this particular point. We anticipate with these furloughs is that it's going to save the town a little bit over $5,000 a week in payroll expenses. Now, again, the furlough definition for us is that with the furlough, it does technically count as a layoff. So they'll be able to collect unemployment. That unemployment will be either for full or part-time of their salary. In either case, they'll still be able to collect the full $600 from the federal Stimulus CARES Act. So we're looking at the employees will not be harmed in general by this. Tied into the furlough is that union members will retain their seniority. And if the town is paying any health care and benefits, vision or dental and health, the town will still continue to pay its pro rata share and the employee will pay their pro rata share while they're on furlough. It's anticipated that hopefully this furlough can be lifted by the end of January. So it's a little over 3 months that we'll be talking about. There will be some departments that probably come back sooner rather than later. For example, the library may be the last to come back as it relates to the governor's order and how many people they're going to allow to assemble. Whereas if we're able to hold to our June 9th town meeting, which is probably questionable because we do anticipate another extension of the governor's piece, is that if it does hold to June 9th, then the town clerk will probably be pulling back some of her employees. One of her employees is going to be going out on 100% furlough and another on half furlough. And she may need to pull those back as she gets closer to, running the elections and to when that town meeting votes are going to occur. And again, that'll be a decision that she'll need to make as it relates to it. The point of the matter is that we've got a lot of employee support for this. At the end of the day is that it will be staggered when people return. But this does save the town about $5,000 a week while we're in this pandemic. And pretty much everybody that's being furloughed right now is not really, the time that they're not working in town hall is the time that they would be getting furloughed, where the town has been paying them to stay home. By doing the furlough, it really has the federal government pay to keep them at home, is the gist of this whole piece that's here. But when we do have to make cuts in 6 months from now or 8 months from now, when we know what the numbers are, this will lessen the burden as to what actually has to be done at that point.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I just wanted to emphasize, because I don't know about the rest of you, but I was contacted by a few people who were under the impression that this voluntary furlough was really more mandatory than voluntary. And my understanding from our last meeting was that we haven't gotten to the mandatory phase yet, if at all, hopefully not, but I just wanted to emphasize that.
Yeah, and the only caveat that I'll say to that is that I'm relying on department heads as to what their needs are. And, for example, again, we have over 25 people. And if you've only got a few calls for this, that's actually pretty good, considering 25, are in support of this. But there are some departments that have looked at this and said, you know, I'm not going to be able to open up my department for another month or two. So why am I keeping employees on at this particular point? So everything that's being done is being coordinated with the department heads for each department.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to get a copy of all the employees and what departments they were. I wish we had some discussions about this prior to this action being taken. I think the Board of Selectmen should have known where this was all coming at and what the ramifications of the town hall and the services that we do provide to our residents.
I agree.
So Bob, on that, I did update the board last week. This is a town administrator issue. Have worked with all the department heads. The people that are being furloughed are not working in town hall today. So it's going to have no impact to town hall as it relates to what's going on at this particular point.
Well, I disagree. I think anything having to do with our employees here of a decision like this, the Board of Selectmen should have been fully aware of the actions that were going to be taken, when they were going to be taken, and how they were going to be taken. And we weren't. And what departments we would turn around and be at before the actual notices went out to people. And that's my opinion.
Well, Bob, I respectfully disagree. Is that our last meeting, I did update the board on this. I talked about what it would be. I talked about working with the unions, that we got feedback from the unions. Again, once this is offered, and the thing to keep in mind is that once this is offered to non-essential employees, that means that all union employees that are considered non-essential have the right to do it or not do it. And it's not that I was able to plan a pandemic and plan this out 6 months ago. This is a proactive step so that you and the other 4 members of the board and the Newtown administrator will be in a better financial position when you have to look at how you're going to reduce your revenue projections for FY21 that we don't know what they are. And without doing this, what I will tell you is that day of reckoning will be much worse without this. And again, this received the union support and the department head support, and this is an operational issue that we're charged with doing.
And I disagree. I think it's a communication issue that was lacking.
Well, I'll just pipe in and say, my understanding last week was that this was going to be, based on the update, was that this was going to be implemented this week on a voluntary basis. So I don't see any surprise here relative to what was advertised last week at the meeting. At any rate. Anything else, Mr. Malinowski?
Given that you have to make it to town hall in 8 minutes, I would say no.
All right, our next meeting will be hopefully tomorrow at 12:30. We do have a note on public records request pending lifting of COVID-19. What is the significance of that?
It's just right now that the priority that we're focusing on, and this has been on every agenda item, is that town hall is focused on essential services. And right now we are not focused on, putting together multi-page public records request until we can have people in town hall at full staff once the governor lifts his stay-at-home order.
Mr. Chairman, did we get an opinion from town council that this was a good, proper way to go?
Town council has written responses to people that have filed public records requests and has given those to Elaine, which has also been given them to the town clerk.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Again, our next meeting hopefully will be tomorrow at 12:30. If not, we will advertise when that next meeting is. We'll go to announcements. Ms. Hewens?
Yes, are you going to talk about the electricity, the community electricity aggregation?
I was going to when it came to my turn, but I could bring it up now. Since Mr. Malinowski's leaving, we're having a series of hearings to renew the Serpent deal we have that gets us the low rates for our citizens that want to participate in the regional electrical deal. So it's simply coming up to the renewal, and I asked Sarah to represent us in these meetings. because Michael won't be available for those meetings going forward. So that's the extent of it. But again, this is when you look at your electrical bill, there's a section that comes in with third-party pricing, and Serpent has gone out and consistently come up with lower pricing for that to decrease the cost to Carver residents in all the towns that participate. It is strictly voluntary. If you don't want to participate, you can opt out. So Sarah's running point on that.
So Ron's suggestion was that I be the primary point of contact, and Mark, you as vice chair would be the alternate.
Sure, that's fine.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Anything else, Sarah?
Yeah, I just real quickly, I wanted to, in one of our many discussions, mine and Ron's, we just mentioned in passing this letter from a Carver resident concerning a foreclosed home on Tremont Street, and how nice it was that we kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. We kept reading the letter, and basically the author of the letter was praising and thanking our health inspector, Kevin Ford, our building inspector, Bob Francis, and our conservation agent, Brooke Monroe, for the work they did on this foreclosed property and how professional they were. And I just thought it was very nice, and I wanted to thank those department heads as well.
All right, Mr. Belbin.
I just want to thank all our emergency personnel that are out there working tirelessly with this issues going on right now. My prayers go out to the electrical worker that got hit. Please be safe, people, when you're driving, especially in storms. Okay, our emergency personnel, and those include those electrical workers. We need to go slow, keep our eyes open. All right, please, and just be safe, everyone. Social distancing. Thank you.
Mr. Dunham?
Yeah, along those same lines, I think a big thank you goes out to our DPW. That was one of the stronger windstorms we've had, and there was an awful lot of tree damage and road closures, and they did a yeoman's job in getting the streets clear. As Bob said, all our emergency management teams, fire, police, EMS did a great job during that. And so I want to thank them for all their efforts in that. And also, along with Bob, stay home if you don't have to, keep social distancing. Carver's been very fortunate in the number of cases that we have. It's great to see that we had the 8 recoveries, so they're not even being monitored anymore. But we're not out of the woods yet. We may be leveling off, but we need to keep going and as Bob says, keep your distance. That's it.
Mr. Townsend?
Thank you. I just want to reiterate what Alan said, I think, and what Bob said. I thank you to all our emergency services personnel, the Eversources workers, the Board of Health that's been working very hard, and just continue to stay safe.
And I guess I will simply reiterate, having been in touch with a lot of our town officials throughout this pandemic. I think that we're doing an amazing job here, that our people should feel confident in the representation they have to keep their health and welfare first and foremost, and to try to protect all of us from this virus that hopefully will start showing signs of receding sometime soon. But I fear that that we've got still a road to walk before we get to the end of this. And with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
For a second. For discussion, those in favor say aye. Those opposed,
Aye.
hopefully see you
Aye.
tomorrow.
All right.